Hi, very good afternoon to you. This is Brahman, and welcome back to today's session, in which we're looking at starting, a new unit, which is personal development for leadership and strategic management. Now, for those of you who have been, continuing to study the ATHE Level 7 Extended Diploma in Strategic Management with us, this is going to be an interesting unit to study because this essentially has been, in the new qualification, has been actually put together as, I would put it this way, two units. One is basically looking at the concept of, personal development and how does, let me put it this way, that when we look at the concept of personal development or PDP, personal development plans, how do we look at these that we have studied at level 4 and 5 to be applied at the level 7 or master's level to develop leadership and management skills? So basically, this particular unit, the way I see it, is a combination of two units. Part of it is to be looking at drawing inflections from the personal leadership and management development that some of you must have studied at level 5 or 6 with the ATHE programs, and the other one is basically strategic management. Now, the idea here of having some parts of the personal development and leadership management included in this unit at level 7 is to primarily look at understanding how your skills, how you develop your skills, how your skills have shaped up over the years with the experience that you've gained, and then how these skills help you. The idea would be to try and review some of these knowledge, skills, and experience-based, skills that you've gained over the years to try and see how they help you develop the concept of leadership and management when you step into a senior role within the organization. Now, it's going to be an interesting unit, as I said earlier, is because of the fact that it has some, interesting components in terms of the reading that we will do. And they will include, or revolve around the key concepts of, looking at leadership, strategic management, and how do we look at their connection with organizational vision and mission and strategy. So if I have to look at, starting this unit off today, what we're looking at doing is covering Learning Outcome 1. And in Learning Outcome 1, we will be primarily looking at studying how to understand, the knowledge and skills which are required in leadership and strategic management, and they then help in the creation of an organizational vision and strategy. Now, within this learning outcome, we are looking at covering 4 tasks, task 1.1 and 1.2, and then there is 1 merit task and 1 distinction task. The merit task is more focused on how do we look at ranking some of these skills when we look at leadership and management position, how do these skills that we use or have developed over the years rank in terms of helping us to build organizational strategy. And the distinction task will be to look at evaluating those management and leadership skills, and in that concept, what we will try and do is basically differentiate between organizational strategy and operations. That's a key part that we need to look at, and for which what I've done is I've looked at a particular video which will kind of nicely differentiate the two functions when you are in leadership and management positions, and how do you differentiate between organizational strategy and operations, and how do your skills essentially help you in that particular sphere to kind of look at achieving goals and objectives with the teams and the teams that you develop. So let's look at dwelling into some of the slides. As always, if you have any questions, please please feel free to ask me through the chat room. And towards the end of the presentation, what I'm going to do is obviously you'll be getting the deck of slides for Learning Outcome 1, which will be available on the Learner Management System. And at the same point in time, I'm going to try and provide you a bit of a handout and reading from the recommended book, which is for this particular unit, in order to develop deeper understanding on some of the concepts and the indicative content which is being prescribed for completing Learning Outcome 1. So let's start with going through some of the slides that I put together. You're looking at going through Learning Outcome 1, and let's look at recapping the aim of the unit. The aim of the unit here is essentially to develop learners to help develop learners, develop their own personal leadership and management skills, and how will these help in the context of creation of organizational vision and strategic direction. Now, before I get into the unit, there are a few key terms which will come across some of the learning outcomes that we will study time and again, and it's a good way for us to look at some of these key terms and look at the definition and the meaning of these key terms with regards to this particular unit. So there are some terms which will appear again and again in learning outcome 1, and these include leadership, strategic management, organizational vision, and organizational strategy. So let's look at the first term, which is leadership. Now, how do you define leadership? Leadership is basically defined as the art of motivating people to be able to do something that you want them to do, or to be able to motivate them to achieve a common goal. Now, the person in that position who's able to use a combination of his personality and skills to be able to make others follow his direction or her direction would be a person who will be termed as in the leadership position. Now, some of the key qualities of leadership, when you look at, there are loads of definitions, loads of different types, which have been defined over the years. But when we look at the generally accepted terms in terms of, what are the qualities of leadership, you look at honesty, integrity, you look at people who are able to inspire others, you will see that leaders are generally very passionate and committed. They are good communicators, so communication is a very important skill which most leaders have, and they develop these skills over the years as they rack up experience of working within organization, businesses, or different types of environments. They have excellent decision-making capabilities. A leader is in a position because of the skills, knowledge, the access to the information and knowledge the person has. The person is definitely going to have one of the capabilities or skills will be decision-making. Leaders, to a certain extent, whenever they are in that position, they are accountable. So when you look at a chief executive officer, chief financial officer, you look at people in that management position, they are accountable to the board, they are accountable to the stakeholders, the shareholders. So accountability is a key factor when we look at the qualities of leadership. They also believe in delegation and empowerment. And, we can go on. So some of these are, leadership qualities. The idea is to understand and quickly refresh the definition of leadership. Let's look at strategic management. Now, we know what is management, but let's look at strategic management. Now, strategic management basically entails you evaluating business goals, objectives, and, whether I say business goals, objectives, and in the plan, you have the ability to be able to then, look at planning the company, basically, when I say planning, basically focusing companies' efforts into, gaining effectiveness, efficiency, and the modern day term that we use is productivity. Now, what is the purpose of strategic management? The purpose of strategic management is primarily to look at, determining goals, how to achieve them, how to use various analysis tools to be able to, come to right decision, and also course correct some of these, let's put it this way, course correct some of the objectives to be able to effectively achieve these objectives for the organization. Now, there are various stages of, strategic management. Now, in particular, 5 stages are, it's a 5-stage process in which the goals are set by the management. The analysis of these goals happens over a period of time. It could be monthly, quarterly, yearly, or annually. Then once the management knows that, these goals have been set and their evaluation can be done, they also look at a long-term strategy formulation or long-term goals for the organization, which could be 12 months, 18 months, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And then they also look at the key aspect of, strategy, implementation, and monitoring. Now, when we look at the 5 stages, we are looking at basically leaders being able to, clarify the vision of the organization. What does the organization or the business stand for? There are various people within the organization which will look at basically gathering or analyzing information. And once that data or information is available, using various analysis tools like VEST or SWOT or any other tools in the frameworks like the BCG matrix, the ANSWER, we know about the competition activity, we know about the details of how the market is operating, the environment in general, which is affecting both the internal and external environment. What they are then able to do is formulate a structure which will best guide the organization through that path, and that is nothing but creation of a strategy. Now, once that has been created, they also create a document which will allow people to interpret the strategy document. That means there'll be procedures, there'll be detailed write-ups that they create in order for other people to understand the function of the to understand the same definition and function of the strategy which has been created, so that when they implement, they are also using the standard definitions or the key terminology which has been described by the management. So there is no differentiation in understanding. That document which is created to look at the implementation primarily looks at creating a similar yardstick which everyone follows and has the same understanding as far as the strategy is concerned. And last but not the least, you look at evaluation and control. That means the management would put appropriate controls or measures in place to be able to evaluate that strategy and how the implementation is going to course correct, and also to look at taking corrective action in case if it is not being implemented properly. And then they have the overall control. So when you look at the process of strategic management, what is it? The process of strategic management in a nutshell is the process of evaluating business goals, the objectives, and in light of it, defining a path through which these goals and objectives can be achieved. Now, this nicely, after understanding these three key terms, leadership, understanding strategic management, and the organizational vision, what this does is that it leads us nicely into understanding, sorry, this slide, my mistake. So basically the third key term that we want to understand, after this is the organizational vision and strategy. So we know leadership, we know strategic management. Let's look at, sorry, one second. So let's look at, in this case, let me just share the screen so that the slide is visible. And then I'll put this into slideshow. So here, what we are looking at is, in general, understanding the third key term, which is organizational vision and strategy. Now, what is vision? Vision is essentially, if you look at the owner of the organization or the founder of the organization, the person who basically creates the goals and objectives of the organization, why it is that, the ethos, why the company or the business was set up, he or she has basically a comprehensive kind of snapshot or a photograph of the organization from a point of view of where he wants to take, why he's created this as a business, and where he wants to take that business in the future. So the vision statement essentially provides the direction to the organization, and it is an overarching statement which basically will look at something from a point of view of a futuristic aspect. So a vision statement essentially would describe what the organization business is trying to achieve. Now, sometimes you will see that well-written vision and mission statements ensure that every element of the strategic process is aligned to the company's long-term goal. Now, this is an important statement, is because when you look at the 5 stages of the strategic management as a process, if the vision and the mission of this company has not been defined properly, then these things do not kind of align well with the strategic management process. And what will happen in turn is that a lot of people working within the business, organization, functions, department, whatever you call it, will have different understandings of what does that mean. And that means that in terms of achieving the organizational goal, because everybody does not read from the same hymn book or the song book, essentially means that everybody then interprets the goals and objectives differently. So it is very important that the vision and mission statements of the organization are defined very clearly, and they include they include basically messages for customers, suppliers, their shareholders, stakeholders and things like that in the business, so that they also then clearly resonate with the objectives which have been set by the organization and the people who work for that organization. An example that I would take here is, if you look at Apple's current mission statement. Now, what they look at is, they are looking at focus. They are currently, as an organization, focused on creating products which are innovative products, and those products are design-based products, and they want to be, for example, looking at producing the best computers, the best, experience, user experience which these products can give, and they want to be able to lead on the, say, digital music revolution. Apple acquired Beats, as a company maybe about 3 years back, and the idea was they wanted to kind of bring across, the availability of music to its, a growing base of users across the globe. Now, over the years, they have tried different things. They bought Beats, they've started to look at hardware and software integration, but this is possible because the organizational vision and the strategy is to own both the hardware and software side of the experience. And that could also be seen from one of the angles is that when you look at the Android phone, wherein the operating system was created by Google, then this is used by a lot of different manufacturers to integrate and create experience. Whereas in the case of Apple, they have not outsourced the iOS, and what they've done is they have controlled and created, because their organizational vision was they want to provide the best user experience. Now, what they felt is that they have to own the hardware and the software to be able to provide that best experience, and that is what the mission statement of, that is what resonates with the mission statement of the company as an Apple. Now let's look at briefly getting into, with the understanding of these key terms, let's look at briefly getting into, how do we look at analysis of your knowledge and skills required to, work in leadership and strategic management positions, and why it is important for, let me put it this, why is it important for you to have these skills to be able to then, create or work, to create an organizational strategy. Now, before I go into it, let's look at, for this task, certain key terms. Excuse me. Now, in this case, what we want to be able to look at is what is a vision statement. So we know what is the vision statement because we briefly covered that the vision statement is something which is future-oriented. It just describes what the organization's ethos or the existence is and what it wants to achieve in the long run. Now, what is the difference between vision and strategy? Now, vision is primarily a goal. That means at some stage, if Apple says, I want to provide the best user experience through all its products that its customers buy, that is a subjective and a long-term goal, because when you recall a couple of years back when Apple introduced Maps, the whole application, was very badly received by its consumers because they felt that Apple provides the best experience, but the implementation of the application of Maps, when it was done on the iOS, did not meet the customer's expectation. So its long-term vision is to currently work towards providing that experience, but at the same time, this is not its strategy. Its strategy is focused on also deriving, objectives or fulfilling objectives primarily for its customers, suppliers, partners, stakeholders, and the board of directors and, other stakeholders which are there in the company. So a vision will be a goal, but at the same time, it cannot be same. It might not be same as strategy. So a business strategy will tell you about how the company is going to achieve its vision. So vision will be the goal, but how to go about it will be defined in the strategy of the company. And for that, they will formulate something called a plan, a strategic plan. And once that plan is made, that will elaborate in the concept of strategic planning. That means planning will be done and its implementation will be done. And the management of it will be done through the process of strategic management. So a strategy is more of a plan and on how the company will look at executing certain activities or functions to be able to achieve the vision that it has set as an end result. Now, let's look at one of the other thing is that what are the fundamental reasons why vision and strategy, companies try and map vision and strategy. One of the fundamental purposes of that is that strategic planning, when it is done as a process to map the vision to this to the accomplishment of the strategy, that process would be looking at, the process of strategic planning is to basically look at aligning company's mission with its vision. So without vision and mission, the plan it normally will not exist. So in this case, the company's mission will start, the process of, looking at achieving the vision, but vision is more of a destination. But in order to how to go to that destination, that will be involved in the process of, strategic planning and that itself will be a process which will be coined as mission, through which it will provide a roadmap for the organization to go and achieve that target. Now, a simple point that I will mention here, sticking to the example of Apple. A simple example that I would give up here is primarily when you look at Apple's vision of providing the best user experience. Then in this case, how do they achieve that best user experience would be that they at some stage define a number of smaller steps or objectives to be able to achieve that vision. Now, how will that happen? That will mean that they have to put a plan in place, and that plan is that, okay, when Steve Jobs created the iPhone, they also created an operating system called the iOS, but it has very basic functions. At that point in time, they wanted to look at camera, email, photographs, and certain communication related to text messages and stuff like that. But over the years, in order to realize that vision, what they've tried to now encapsulate into the Apple iPhone and the iOS is the experience of doing FaceTime, the experience of, for example, looking at the best camera, the experience of map or location-based services, and this is all aiding into that particular idea of providing the best experience, because with one device you're able to use it as a navigation device, you're able to use it as a camera, you're able to use it as a computer, for emailing, for internet browsing, for phone, for messages. And what that has entailed is that has become an ecosystem. But this was the long-term vision of Steve Jobs. How they've realized this long-term vision is if you go back and see the 10 years of strategic planning that they have done in order to keep adding unique functions and features which the customers are demanding into the OS and then providing them on the device has enabled them to provide and give across the best user experience. Now, we need to the reason I'm putting across some of these things is because we need to be quite clear about these terms, because these terms at some stage have different meanings, and they need to be understood from a context of how they work and relate to each other. Now, let's look at a quick difference between quick relationship between what is the relationship between mission and vision. Now, we know vision is long term, it's a future, it's a destination that you want to arrive at. How do you arrive? You do strategic planning, and the process of managing that planning makes it is strategic management. Now, a mission statement is a concise explanation of organization's reason for existence, right? Now, if I have to say that, what do you do? You have to normally look at giving me a concise, okay, I'm a teacher for a living. That's fine. But what do you do in terms of, you're a teacher, but what, in which sector, in which field? So if I have to define that, that becomes a bit more precise. And when I look at that bit more precise definition, it is asking me to say that, okay, I'm a teacher in business and management sector and or business and management disciplines. And that kind of defines, my reason of being a teacher is that I'm in that particular sector and I teach those subjects. So a mission here similarly describes the organizational purpose and its overall intention. So when you look at Starbucks, the other example that I'm going to pick up is, now Starbucks wants to serve the best coffee. Now, when they look at this is their mission. Now, this is not a long-term vision. They want to be the best to serve the coffee, and they want to bring across the best products around coffee and make that available to their customers. So their overall intentions here is that as a company, their overall vision is to be the best coffee company in the world, for example, and then in order to have that achieved at any given point in time, they have a specific mission to be able to serve customers, and then that mission is primarily the existence of the organization. So here, in order for it to communicate its vision, it has to properly communicate the purpose and direction to its employees, customers, vendors, and other stakeholders, because the way we see it is, if you do not get that experience when you walk into a Starbucks, or store, or if you walk into Starbucks and you don't get the same experience that you're getting, then at the end of the day, what will happen is that you will start losing customers. And if it starts losing customers, its vision cannot be realized, because if it's not able to serve products to customers, how will the company realize its long-term vision? Now, this particular chart that I put together basically kind of shows the link between the mission, strategy, and corporate objectives. So, as you know, vision is the long-term position which the company wants to achieve. Within the vision, a static or a continuous process of realizing that let's put it this way: the vision, when it needs to be realized, it needs to be specific. But at any given point in time, when we look at vision, it is also looking at defining it from a point of view of where the company is at what point in time. So mission, corporate objectives, and strategy kind of form a triangle. And then in order to achieve that vision, the company has to balance the strategy with the corporate objectives and its mission to achieve the long-term vision of the organization. So vision tends to be long-term, future, and the destination that the company wants to arrive at. But mission would be, it could be a broad and a simple statement. It encapsulates what the vision statement talks about, and has the same core values and principles which will allow it to reach that final destination. Corporate objectives, normally when they are set, they are set using a SMART acronym, that they are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And then strategy is the process through which all this is put together to the employee stakeholders, partners, suppliers, and then the process of managing it to be able to achieve that particular mission leading to the vision, long-term vision. Now, what we also want to look at is, and I was giving you an example of Starbucks, so what I want to do is say, let's define the mission statement of Starbucks. Now, Starbucks mission statement, has 6 guiding principles, and what they talk about is that they want to basically address each and every aspect or type of customers in their, mission statement. So they want to look at customers, employees, stakeholders, shareholders, and in general, other partners who work with the organization. So their mission statement consists of 6 guiding principles. The first one talks about, provide a great working environment and treat each other with respect and dignity. Now, this is primarily for employees and, people who work within the organization. They want to embrace diversity as an essential component in the way they want to do business. So what they want to say is we are looking at attracting the best talent, and this then goes out to, people who are looking at, Starbucks as a potential employer. Now, they want to apply the highest standards of excellence to, looking at purchasing, roasting, some of the processes that they do or undertake in the brewing of coffee. And this is towards their partners, suppliers. They want to develop enthusiastically satisfied customers, which allows them to build a loyalty base and allows them to bring in, forecast or, some sort of a predictability into the business. They want to look at contributing positively to the communities and the environment. That means they want to be seen as a company which is kind of executing its responsibilities towards the environment, corporate social responsibility, and things like that. And then for the stakeholders or shareholders, they want to recognize profitability, which is required for the future success of, Starbucks. So as you can see, the mission statement more is talking about, who they are, what their values are. It translates into something called a vision statement, where they want to be, what they want to become, or they want to be known as a company. And in order to achieve that, they have to put a strategy in place, which is how they will achieve, basically plan in place in terms of how they will achieve that, long-term vision. And last but not the least, this strategy is then broken down into smaller goals and objectives, which are then broken down at different levels of the organization to be understood, so that all of them then work collectively towards partners, suppliers, customers. They all collectively work towards achieving that long-term, vision. Now, let's understand very quickly one or two other things. Is what is the relationship between organizational vision, mission, strategy, and objectives? Now, we know that vision is more of a future-oriented declaration. If I add the definition of mission into it, it guides primarily the organization to achieve or create a strategic development plan. And then we look at the objectives. They are the, the POLC cycle that we've discussed here primarily is summarized in that slide, where mission leads to vision. Mission leads to the creation of, I would say the values and the culture, the beliefs. Vision is primarily looking at, the long-term goal of the organization, where they want to be, how they want to be seen. Strategy leading to the creation of, the planning, and then basically the micro planning leading to, adaptation of that long-term strategy into goals and objectives for people working at different stages within the organization. Now, in the second part, what we want to be able to look at is how do we understand the contribution leadership and strategic management make in terms of achieving the organizational vision and strategy. So here we need to be able to understand the concept of leadership and management. So leadership, when we look at, is basically nothing but there are various definitions of leadership. We look at different leadership styles. We also talk about today the 21st century leadership. But in order for me to basically look at the definition here, what I've done is I've looked at the Stockdale's definition, wherein he concluded that almost there are too many definitions. But when we look at, we sum it up that leader is someone who has followers, as simple as that. By Peter Drucker, he basically said we looked at the definition of leadership when we started. A person or a person who's able to basically motivate other people to do and achieve the goals and objectives or follow him or her is basically a leader. And in order to do that, the person then has to use a lot of his skills, knowledge to be able to entail that following, which will allow him to become a leader and then obviously delegate tasks or get the goals and achieve the goals and objectives. Now, what we do see is that leadership at some point in time is no different from social influence, which some people or members of the public might have in this society. When we look at, say, for example, people who are in the well-known positions, say, for example, who are in the governmental position, or you have a title, or you are in that position, they then have the ability to be able to look at leading a pack of people or group of people to be able to achieve objectives. Now, one of the other things that we will look at is when we look at the concept of management. Now, in the concept of management, what we are looking at is how do we define management? Management is nothing but an art which is not which basically you can use as a process to accomplish some goals. Now, sometimes you hear the key terms like this person is a very good people's manager, this person is able to manage people well, and this person is able to get the jobs done. So there is a key differentiation between a leader and a manager. But here, when we look at people who work within basically look at creating organizational vision and strategy, have to be at some point in time both good leaders and also managers. So sometimes you will see that a lot of organizations they choose a balance of they choose to, when they hire people, they choose a mix and a balance of leaders and managers because they need both to be able to succeed in the market. So sometimes you will see that people will look at leaders because they want to look at long-term perspective in terms of survivability, in terms of competition, growth for the organization, and that is where they want people to come across with long-term vision, conviction, passion, to be able to come in and lead the organization, to come and change the direction of the business or the organization. Sometimes you will see organizations who need managers because they want people who can come in and manage situations, they can manage issues, they can manage problems, and given a task, they are able to achieve, complete, or deliver those tasks. So sometimes you will see that the organization will require, not sometimes, in fact, all organizations require a mix of leaders and managers. And when something is new, something is going to be invented, or something which requires, let's put it this way, when we look at going back to the example of Apple, Steve Jobs has always worked, even though he was leading the organization, but he was always working on newer products, newer offerings that Apple could bring out. And the key was, at that stage, they wanted to bring out things which were different, which were looking at customer demand, which were looking at the customers' feedback to be able to get them to produce or create something which was required by customers. And when we look at managers, when Steve Jobs was at the helm of Apple, Tim Cook was the chief operating officer. So he was basically managing the operations, and Steve was kind of leading the company towards the creation of new products. So as you can see, even in an organization like Apple, we could clearly see two people working together, but one looking at long term to create the new products which Apple has brought out, the iPhone, the iPad, the iWatch, and things like that. And at the same point in time, somebody at the helm to manage the operations and to manage the tasks to ensure that the delivery happens, to ensure that the operations are running smoothly, and that is where we look at that definition of a balance between leaders and managers. Now let's look at, there are loads of differences, and I can provide a handout which will primarily differentiate between who are leaders and who are managers, what skills they have, and how the two disciplines actually differ. But let's look at some of the differences from a point of view of discussing today on with context to the task one. Now, when we look at the differences between managers and leaders in a workplace, what we do see is I've kind of put them across and try to link it to the vision, the mission, the organizational strategy that we are talking about, and we want to link it to that because that is what the task is asking us to do. So when we look at management, it's more about budgets and plans. It's about process and timelines. It's about to a certain extent. When we look at vision, it's more about the impersonal attitude of setting the vision or setting the goals and objectives to be able to achieve. Now, leadership in this case looks at setting the direction. They look at further developing the vision. When you go back again to the example of Apple, and we look at 1994 when Apple was when Steve Jobs was thrown out of the company by the board because they felt that some of his plans did not meet up with the company, and the company was not making enough profits. He believed in his vision, and what he did was he basically went back. When he was thrown out of the company, he went out and he created a new company called Next Computers, and they basically started focusing on the same set of products which he was focused on because he knew what he wanted to create. Now, his idea was that leaders here look at setting the direction and create something which will be long term. So he looked at developing, some strategic plans, and that is where the board then invited him back in 1997 to join the company, and he came in and launched the Apple series of computers, which he was developing in the other company. So leaders are more focused on their ideas, their vision, and also are quite passionate. They passionately believe that what they're trying to do is something which is going to be changing, the requirements, or is going to be meeting the requirements of what customers want in the market. The second aspect is when we look at human development or networking. So management is a function which is more related to organizing, staffing, creating a structure, delegating responsibility. And in terms of leadership, it's more about aligning the structure. It's more about aligning the staff, making them understand the meaning of the vision, making them understand the fundamental meanings of why they exist, and then getting them on the same plane or same understanding to be able to make them work towards achieving that goal or objective or that vision. The other thing that we look at is when you look at managers, they look at monitoring results. They are more or less task oriented. But when we look at leaders, they're more towards motivating and inspiring staff or people within the organization. They are more about looking at removing the barriers which are there, which kind of inhibit staff performance, workforce performance, or productivity in this case. Leaders take more risk. Managers manage situations, problems, issues. They're not, in the position wherein they take decisions which are risky decisions. They will manage a particular project. They will manage, certain functions of that project. But decision making is primarily, very controlled, very balanced. But in the case of leaders, they look at, high risk, high gain kind of an approach, and that is where that clear difference comes across. Now, when we look at vision in particular, managers' vision is quite, I would not say short, but because they're focused on tasks and activities and operations, they look at, completing them, and their outcomes are quite predictable. But when you look at leaderships, they basically look at going after a project strategic plan, which could, say, for example, in this case, when we look at the, Sir Richard Dyson. Now, Dyson as a company is planning to bring across, the electric vehicles. Now, this is a vision that he is now coining to take the company into that direction. Now, he's employed a lot of engineers. There's a lot of cost being spent currently, R&D which is being spent, but he genuinely believes that Dyson can actually create something in the market which will be beneficial. And because the project is very risky, where the project is quite large. To a certain extent, what I'm trying to say is that the outcome of that project is not very predictable. Whether there will be other competitors, the car or the product that they are trying to bring out, which is still not being declared, is going to be acceptable by the consumers. So here there is a risk involved, and obviously there is a lot of uncertainty, or in general terms, there is no predictability in terms of how the project will pan out. So when we look at leaders and managers, or management and leadership, there are very subtle differences when we try and compare them across, the case of organizational strategy, vision, and mission. Now, briefly looking at one or two slides which I put together primarily for the merit and distinction task. Now, here we are talking about, we've discussed a number of skills that the leaders have, or in particular the leaders have. Now, what we want to be able to do is list those skills in a particular ranking order to say that if these skills are a must, they need to be present, and they are being ranked in this particular order. So what I've looked at is basically, skills which good leaders need, and in what particular fashion they need to have these skills, or in a particular order they need to have these skills to be able to successfully create and achieve a strategy that they are putting in place. So when you look at the example of Dyson, for example, they're known to produce a lot of innovative products in the market. You look at the Dyson vacuum cleaners, you look at Dyson, hair dryers, things like that. The fans and other bits and pieces that they've introduced over the years, they have been quite innovative and differentiated from the market. Now, one of the clear things which you see in the company's strategic vision with the person who's at the helm of the organization is that he has strategic thinking. He has the ability to be able to develop a vision where he wants to be, or where he wants the organization to be. Apart from that, he also has skills in planning and delivery. He also has over the years, I think when I put it this way, it's clearly seen that they have people management skills. They also have ability to be able to manage change within the organization. They are excellent communicators, and to a certain extent, they are excellent in persuasion and influencing others to follow them or follow their vision. Now, if I have to talk about these factors in terms of ranking, what I've done is I've just generally defined them using a few slides to say that what are we talking about here. Now, strategic thinking skills, when we say, it's basically having an idea or a vision where they want to be or what they want to achieve. Now, he wants to bring out, Dyson, for example, currently wants to bring out an electric vehicle in the market, which he feels is going to be quite competitive, and they are working on that. So there's a strategic thinking that this as a market is going to explode, and with a lot of focus on global warming and the conformance in terms of reduction in the carbon house, or basically the carbon emissions. They want to look at basically following something which they think is going to be quite strategic in the future. Planning and delivery skills. Now, along with thinking, you need to have these skills to be able to develop something, put that into a plan, and then have people to work on that particular plan to be able to achieve that goal objective. So sometimes you will see that people have, when I say planning and delivery skills, they have project management and project planning skills, which help them, both as managers and leaders, but in general, they have these skills to be able to plan and deliver on certain tasks which they, intend to do or intend to delegate. They also have people management skills. So you will see people in this, when I say ranking, this will be the third important skill which we expect, people to have, and they have these skills because they have to be able to motivate and encourage their followers to follow them and follow the the guidelines set for them to be able to achieve that goal and objective. The fourth important skill will be change management and innovation. So the leaders, they understand how change is to be brought across into the organization, what process needs to be followed, how communication needs to be done, and in order to bring that change across, where they have to basically apply the carrot and stick approach to be able to get people around that particular vision. The other point would be communication skills, which I've kind of mentioned earlier. They are extremely good communicators. They are passionate. They are able to get people around them. They have, they have the vision to be able to, in order to create that vision, they need to have a good communication. They need to have good communication skills, because with these skills, they are able to, in having those skills allows them to basically be good listeners. They want to listen actively to get feedback from customers, employees, staff. They are very good at questioning. They ask the right questions at the right time. They are quite assertive to a certain level, and they are able to build rapport with people, network with people quite efficiently. And to a certain extent, this is something that some of these skills then help them to build a certain amount of charisma, around themselves, which allows the people to see that person as a leader. You will also see that leaders also use personal performance. They will set examples to be able to do some tasks, so that when they do it themselves, they're able to set a benchmark saying that this can be achieved. And normally you will see that people are not, even if they have to criticize, they are very constructive in from providing feedback or criticism. But these are abilities that they have, and they have been able to develop over the years, and so importance of communication skills. Now, one of the last skills which I would probably say is that they are very good they have very good persuasion and influencing skills, because good leaders need a lot of tools to be able to persuade and influence their followers to and then follow them, and then obviously try and achieve the goals and objectives set. So here they understand, because of the experience, because of the working environment, they're able to pick up skills or softer skills, and these softer skills essentially allows them to look at understanding what is the emotional IQ or emotional intelligence, how they look at transactions. And in some cases, when you look at hiring people at that level, what most organizations do is put the candidates through certain type of personality tests, emotional IQ tests, so that they are able to try and understand that they are trying to bring in a person which will actually align the organization, get the organization going, get the organization together, rather than creating the other way, rather than taking the organization the other way around. So some of these skills are put in that particular order, and they are in that ranking order. So for us to be able to clearly understand that why these skills are required, and how these skills then help in the creation of organizational strategy and vision when leaders work in a particular organization or business. Now, I've got one video to end up today's session, and this video basically looks at covering the difference between organizational operations and organizational strategy. And here I picked up this particular video from YouTube, which kind of explains the concepts very well and allows you to then look at understanding why these skills are important, and then how these skills help in doing different side of operations within the organization. So if I play this YouTube video.
Hi, my name is Chris Stowell with CMOE, and today we're going to help leaders and managers understand the difference between operations and strategy. In today's competitive business world, effective managers need to understand the difference between the operational side of the business and the strategy side of the business. Expanded knowledge of how these two business engines can work in parallel will drive better performance and competitiveness for the organization. To provide greater clarity, think of operations and strategy as two separate but related engines on a boat. Both engines propel the boat forward, and while forward movement can occur with only one engine, the boat moves faster and is more responsive if both engines are running efficiently. Each engine is important, and each engine requires fuel, maintenance, skillful attention, so that the boat's ability to deliver results is optimized. Running on one engine could quickly move you in a direction that will backfire, taking your future competitive advantage with it. If we focus all our attention, effort, and resources solely on the operational side of the business, we put the whole organization at risk. Focusing solely on that operational side may seem like the smart thing to do at the moment, but over the long run, your efficiency may suffer. However, focusing only on the strategic engine is equally as bad. Without the operational capacity to implement or take advantage of our insights about future innovations, processes, or market needs, all of this strategic effort and planning will be for nothing. We must understand and balance both sides of the business. So let's take a look at the operational engine of the business. Because many people are directly connected to and support this operational engine in one way or another, operations is easy to understand. Think of the operational engine as the current value chain of activities that drives the delivery of business objectives and is concerned with executing on those everyday activities and commitments. The purpose of the operational engine is to keep the current activities in the organization moving and functioning at peak levels. We focus a lot of our energy, resources, and brainpower on how to best execute these activities today. That's extremely important because if we're ineffective on the operational side, strategy and the strategic positioning ultimately doesn't matter. Let's take a look at the strategic engine, the strategy side of the business. Strategy asks you what you could be doing to equip and transform the operational engine in order to become more competitive in the long run. Its intent is to help the organization discover new sources of competitive advantage. A business strategy defines how the business and its members should evolve in order to achieve long-term success. Strategy asks questions concerning solutions, services, and concepts the business may want to offer, as well as new markets and customers you may want to serve. The strategy engine needs to work in tandem with the operational engine, understanding threats and opportunities, experimenting with new processes and solutions, and shaping the future so the organization positions itself to win both in the short term and in the long term. The strategic engine helps businesses make changes or adjustments in its direction to ensure that the organization is adding value for its customers, owners, and employees, all while doing its best work while avoiding misfires. It is extremely important that everyone in the organization understands the strategy, offers ideas, and crafts supporting strategic plans that align with the overarching strategy of the business. The operational workforce will largely determine whether the strategic shifts will succeed or fail as the operations adapt to a new, brave strategic change. If the strategic engine does its part, the organization will avoid that calcification and atrophy that occur when a business doesn't think ahead or disposes of those strategic initiatives. Managing the two engines simultaneously to drive the business forward takes a lot of discipline. A perfect balance between operations and strategy will never exist. Some days will require greater emphasis on the operational side, and other days will be heavily focused on that future-oriented strategic planning and execution. Those businesses that don't pay attention to both business engines will soon find the market's currents are driving them into ruin. Don't let your ship sink. If you carefully manage and maintain both your operational and strategic engines, you'll find yourself clearly navigating your business towards the destinations on the horizon.
So, as you can see, so what this video basically explains is that why the operations side of things are, when we look at achieving, certain objectives, or say, for example, a sales goal which has been set by the organization, that achievement of sales goals is more towards the operations side of things, that the company needs to achieve, say, $1 billion in terms of sales on this product. Now, that is an operational goal which has been set, as against the strategic goal would be that the company needs to achieve, say, a 50% market share in the market, or achieve a 50% market share. Now, that would be a strategic goal, and in order to basically look at differentiating the two, the company might look at selling more products and achieving the sales target, which will be more of operations, vis-a-vis the company, making more, taking a strategic decision to lower the profits in order to increase sales, but grabbing more market share. So I think when we look at this last particular bit here, you will have to take an example to show evaluation of how some of these skills are used in order to achieve organizational operations efficiency, and to a certain extent the organizational strategy, from that aspect. So with this particular thing, at this moment, what I would suggest is that I will look at, closing this session today. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop me an email or ask me through the forum. And what I'm going to do is make a copy of this presentation available to you, along with the copy of the recording, which will be available on the learner management system for learners who would not be able to attend. Until then, until next week, when I see you again on the second learning outcome for this particular unit, let's look at going through some of this to revise, and I'm going to send across some reading, recommended reading, pages from the book in order to develop a bit of deeper understanding in terms of what we've covered today. Thanks very much, and bye for now.